The day I found my kitty cat after 1 month, a month of hope, heartbreak, and miracles. Hello guys, it's hard to describe the kind of panic and helplessness you feel when your beloved pet goes missing. For an entire month, I lived in a haze of anxiety, sleepless nights, and unanswered questions because Ginger, my kitty cat, had vanished without a trace. She was more than just a pet to me, she was a companion, a source of comfort, and in many ways, my little shadow. Wherever I went, Ginger would follow. If I was reading, she'd curl up on my lap, purring softly. If I was cooking, she'd sit near the kitchen doorway, watching me as though waiting for a taste of whatever I was making. Her presence was such an integral part of my daily life that when she disappeared, it felt like I had lost more than just a pet. I had lost a piece of my world. It all started on what seemed like an ordinary Saturday afternoon. I let Ginger outside into the backyard, like I always did. She loved to explore. Despite being a house cat, she enjoyed those short adventures outside, sniffing at the plants, chasing the occasional bug, or lounging under the tree near the fence where the sun would bathe her in a warm glow. She was never one to roam far. I would call her after an hour or so, and she'd come trotting back in, happy and content. But that day, Ginger didn't return when I called. I wasn't too worried at first. Sometimes, she liked to linger outside, soaking up the late afternoon sun or getting caught up in whatever feline business occupied her mind. I figured she'd be back soon enough. But as the hours passed and the sun began to sink lower in the sky, I started to feel uneasy. I went outside and called her name again, but there was no sign of her. I walked around the yard, peeking under the bushes and behind the shed where she sometimes liked to hide, but she wasn't there. I searched the whole backyard, front yard, and even walked up and down the street, calling her name, thinking she might have wandered farther than usual. Still, no Ginger. That first night, I left the back door slightly open, hoping she'd find her way home while I slept. I barely slept at all, my mind racing with worry, imagining all the things that could have happened to her. The next morning, I was up before dawn, calling her name again, hoping to hear the familiar sound of her soft meow in response. But the silence that greeted me only deepened my sense of dread. By that point, I knew something was wrong. Ginger had never stayed out overnight before, and I could feel a heavy knot of anxiety forming in the pit of my stomach. I printed out dozens of flyers with Ginger's picture on them, a shot I had taken of her lounging by the window, her green eyes bright and alert as they peered out at the world. She looked majestic in that photo, as if she owned everything she surveyed. I plastered those flyers on every streetlight, telephone pole, and community board I could find. Missing cat. The headline read, followed by my phone number, and the description of Ginger, her orange tabby fur with white patches on her chest and paws, her bright green eyes, and her soft, sweet demeanor. I walked through the neighborhood every day, knocking on doors, asking people if they'd seen her. I spent hours walking the streets, calling her name, shaking her bag of treats in the hope she'd come running to the sound like she always did. But day after day, there was nothing. It was as if she had simply vanished. I posted online in every local group I could find, from community forums to neighborhood apps, hoping that someone, somewhere, might have seen her. Every time my phone buzzed with a notification, I felt a surge of hope, only to have it dashed when the message was something unrelated. Each time I came home to an empty house, the silence weighed on me even more. The absence of her soft purring, her little playful antics, her warmth curled up next to me at night, it all felt like a constant reminder that something was missing, something irreplaceable. Days stretched into weeks, and with each passing day, my hope began to fade. My family and friends were supportive, always telling me that cats were survivors, that she would find her way back. But as time went on, I couldn't help but feel the sting of doubt creeping in. What if something terrible had happened to her? What if she was lost somewhere, scared and hungry, unable to find her way home? Or worse, what if she'd been hurt? By the third week, the search had taken an emotional toll on me. I was exhausted, both physically and mentally. Each day felt like a repeat of the one before, searching, calling, hoping, and being met with nothing but silence. It was as though the world had swallowed Ginger whole, and I was left with nothing but her absence. I began to accept the possibility that she might not come home. One evening, after a long day at work, I sat on the porch, staring out into the yard, where I had last seen her. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the ground. The orange and pink hues of the sky reminded me of Ginger's fur, and I felt a pang of sadness wash over me. I missed her so much. Every time I thought about the little things, how she'd paw at my leg when she wanted attention, or how she'd sit on the windowsill watching the birds outside, it made her absence even harder to bear. Still, something in me refused to give up entirely. Maybe it was out of habit or sheer determination, but I decided to take one last walk around the block before nightfall. I grabbed my flashlight and set off, retracing the same route I had taken so many times before. I called her name softly into the fading light, even though I didn't really expect an answer anymore. I passed by the usual spots: the neighbors' yards, the alley behind the grocery store, the small park where she used to play. As I rounded the corner near an overgrown lot that I had passed dozens of times, I noticed something strange. There was a flicker of movement near the old, rusted fence. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, but then I heard it, a faint, barely audible sound. A meow. My heart jumped in my chest. Could it really be her? I called out her name again, my voice trembling with hope. Ginger? For a moment, everything was still. And then, from the shadows, a small figure emerged. I could see the outline of a cat, thin and scruffy, but unmistakably Ginger. My breath caught in my throat as I knelt down, holding out my hand. Ginger, is that you? She hesitated, her green eyes wide and cautious as she stepped forward slowly, almost as if she didn't believe it was me. When she reached my hand, she sniffed it tentatively, and then, as if recognizing me at last, she let out the softest little meow. I couldn't hold back my tears. I scooped her up into my arms, holding her close, feeling the warmth of her fur against my chest. She was thinner than before, her fur matted and dirty, but she was alive. She was home. I rushed back to the house, holding her tightly, tears streaming down my face. My heart was pounding with a mixture of relief and disbelief. After a whole month, my Ginger was finally back in my arms. When I walked through the door, my family was shocked to see her. We all gathered around, showering her with love and relief. Ginger, though weak and tired, nestled into my lap, her soft purring filling the room once more. We took her to the vet the next morning. She was dehydrated and malnourished, but miraculously, she hadn't suffered any serious injuries. The vet said she had likely been surviving on scraps, scavenging for food wherever she could. It was a miracle she had made it through, but then again, cats are survivors. And Ginger had proven to be just that, strong, resilient, and incredibly lucky. In the weeks that followed, Ginger gradually regained her strength. She slept a lot at first, curling up in all her favorite spots as if reclaiming them. She would snuggle into my lap whenever I sat down, her purring louder and more content than ever before. It felt like the house had come alive again with her presence. I noticed that Ginger had changed a little after her adventure. She seemed more cautious, more aware of her surroundings. She didn't wander far when I let her outside, preferring to stay close to home, as if she knew how precious that sense of safety was now. And I was more protective of her too. I made sure she was never out of my sight for long, grateful for every moment I had with her. Looking back on that month without Ginger, I realized how much she meant to me. It was a difficult time, filled with uncertainty and heartache, but finding her again reminded me of the importance of hope. Even when it seemed like she was lost for good, she found her way back. And in doing so, she brought back the light and warmth that had been missing from my life. So, no matter how long it takes, I've learned that you should never give up hope. Sometimes, when you least expect it, life has a way of surprising you. Ginger's return was the miracle I had been waiting for. She came home, and with her, she brought back a piece of my heart.